The power of daily connection with God lies in the quiet, sacred moments when your heart opens and your soul reaches beyond the noise of the world. It is in these moments of stillness, when you intentionally pause and turn your focus toward the divine, that your strength begins to grow from within. Every day, life brings its share of challenges, distractions, and doubts. Yet prayer serves as the spiritual anchor that keeps you centered and grounded no matter what the world throws your way. When you commit to daily prayer, you are not merely speaking words. You are aligning your spirit with a higher purpose, allowing divine energy to flow into your thoughts, emotions, and actions. Each prayer becomes a renewal, a quiet declaration that you are not facing this life alone. Through prayer, you find clarity when the mind is clouded, comfort when the heart aches, and courage when fear whispers that you are not enough. When you begin your day with prayer, something changes in the atmosphere of your life. You step out of your bed not as someone rushing into chaos, but as someone who has already connected with the source of peace. You carry a strength that is not visible but deeply felt. It shapes how you speak, how you think, and how you face others. Prayer reminds you that your power does not come from your circumstances, but from the one who guides you through them. It shifts your focus from what you lack to what you already have, from fear to faith, from worry to worship. The simple act of talking to God becomes a daily infusion of courage and wisdom. Every whispered word becomes a step closer to inner calm, and every moment of silence becomes a chance to hear the still, gentle voice that reassures you that everything will fall into place as it should. This daily connection with God through prayer also deepens your sense of purpose. It gives you direction in moments when you feel lost, reminding you that your path is not random, but divinely orchestrated. There are days when you may not feel strong, when your energy runs low, and when your mind is filled with uncertainty. But prayer bridges the gap between weakness and renewal. It allows you to draw from a source that never runs dry. When you kneel in prayer, whether in words or quiet thought, you are entering a sacred exchange where your burdens are lifted and your spirit is replenished. That is why even a few minutes spent in sincere prayer can alter the entire tone of your day. It becomes less about how long you pray and more about how deeply you connect. Prayer is more than a ritual or a habit, it is a relationship. When you approach God with openness and sincerity, you invite transformation. You begin to feel an inner stability that cannot be shaken by external events. People may fail you, plans may fall apart, but the strength that comes from prayer remains constant. It sustains you in ways you might not even recognize at first. You start to notice that challenges no longer consume you as they once did, that your reactions become calmer, your thoughts more grounded, and your words more thoughtful. It is because the presence of God within you begins to shape the way you live. The more consistent your prayer life becomes, the more you reflect divine qualities like patience, compassion, and peace. When you talk to God every day, you are reminded that life is not a race to be won, but a journey to be walked with faith. You start to see beauty even in struggle because prayer teaches you to view your challenges through the lens of purpose rather than pain. Every obstacle becomes an opportunity to grow. Every delay a lesson in trust. You realize that strength is not found in avoiding hardship, but in facing it with divine confidence. Prayer becomes your daily reminder that you have access to unlimited power when you stay connected to the Creator. In a world that constantly demands your attention, prayer becomes the sacred pause that restores your perspective. It reminds you of what truly matters. Instead of being overwhelmed by external pressures, you begin to find peace in the present moment. You learn to release control and surrender to divine timing. Each prayer whispered in faith becomes a seed planted in the garden of your life, and over time, those seeds bloom into patience, wisdom, and strength. Prayer does not always change your circumstances instantly, but it changes you, and that inner transformation alters how you handle everything around you. When you pray daily, your mind begins to quiet down. You stop reacting impulsively to every problem and start responding with wisdom. The more time you spend in communion with God, the more you understand that strength is not about appearing unshakable on the outside, but about maintaining peace on the inside. The storms may still come, but through prayer, you find the calm within them. That calm becomes your unbreakable foundation. You start to notice how even in moments of pain you feel guided, protected, and supported. Prayer reveals the truth that you were never meant to carry the weight of life alone. It teaches you to lean on divine strength when your own runs out. Each prayer is like a breath for the soul. Just as your body needs air to survive, your spirit needs prayer to thrive. It keeps your heart aligned with love, your thoughts anchored in faith, and your actions guided by compassion. It becomes your invisible armor, guarding your mind against negativity and your heart against despair. When you pray daily, you learn that every conversation with God brings new strength. Even if the answers do not come immediately, prayer reshapes the way you see delay, teaching you that waiting is not punishment but preparation. It strengthens your patience and deepens your trust in divine timing. Through prayer, you also begin to develop humility. You realize that you don't need to have all the answers because you are connected to the one who does. You stop relying solely on your own understanding and instead allow divine wisdom to guide you. That surrender does not make you weak, it makes you strong in ways that human logic cannot explain. You begin to feel lighter because the burdens that once weighed heavily on your heart are now in the hands of God. This daily exchange between your human weakness and divine power transforms you into someone who faces each day not with fear but with quiet confidence. Over time, you will notice that prayer changes not only how you feel but also how you act. You become more forgiving, more patient, and more compassionate because prayer softens the heart and strengthens the spirits. It opens your eyes to the blessings around you and helps you see life through a lens of gratitude rather than lack. Even when you go through seasons of struggles, daily prayer reminds you that there is purpose in the process and that every difficulty is shaping you into a stronger version of yourself. In moments when you feel alone or unheard, prayer reassures you that you are always seen and always loved. It connects you to a divine source of comfort that no person or circumstance can replace. The more you practice this daily connection, the more natural it becomes. Prayer turns into a lifestyle rather than an obligation. It becomes as essential as breathing, something you do not out of duty but out of desire. It is in that consistency that true transformation happens. Your faith grows, your heart strengthens, and your mind becomes anchored in peace. Prayer teaches you that even when nothing around you changes, something within you always does. Every time you kneel, close your eyes, or whisper a prayer in your heart, you are stepping into a divine exchange of love and strength. You are saying, God, I trust you to carry what I cannot. That act of faith, repeated daily, builds a foundation so solid that no storm can shake it. You start each day with renewed hope because you know that you are not walking through life alone. The connection you build through daily prayer becomes your greatest source of endurance, courage, and peace. It gives you the resilience to rise again, no matter how many times life knocks you down, and the quiet assurance that with God by your side, you are always strong enough to face whatever comes next. Faith over fear is not just an inspiring phrase. It is a way of living that transforms the way you see the world and respond to life's challenges. Every person encounters moments when fear tries to take control. Fear of failure, fear of loss, fear of the unknown, fear of not being enough. It creeps into your thoughts silently and tries to weaken your belief in what's possible. But faith, when cultivated through prayer, becomes the shield that stands between you and those fears. It does not mean that fear disappears completely. Rather, it means that faith becomes stronger than the fear that once ruled you. When you begin each day in prayer, you remind yourself that your trust lies not in human strength or uncertain outcomes, but in the power of a divine plan that is always working for your good. Faith over fear is about surrendering control to something greater than yourself. Fear thrives in uncertainty, in the gaps between what you can see and what you cannot predict. But faith turns that uncertainty into a space for trust, a sacred opening where you say, even if I do not understand what's happening, I know God is guiding me. When you pray with genuine belief, you replace the trembling voice of doubt with the steady rhythm of divine assurance. You begin to live with the quiet confidence that no matter what challenges arise, there is a higher purpose unfolding. Fear feeds on your imagination, painting pictures of worst-case scenarios. But faith uses that same imagination to envision what can go right when God is in control. Through prayer, faith becomes more than an idea. It becomes an inner force that strengthens your spirit. When fear whispers, "You can't," faith answers, "With God I can." When fear says, "What if you fail?" faith responds, "Then I will learn, rise, and try again." It is in those internal battles that your spiritual muscles are built. Every time you choose faith over fear, you grow stronger, calmer, and more resilient. The habit of prayer nurtures this mindset because prayer constantly reminds you that you are never walking alone. It brings you back to the truth that your life is under divine care, even when things seem uncertain. There are moments when fear feels overwhelming, when your mind becomes crowded with doubts and your heart feels heavy with worry. Those are the times when faith becomes your lifeline. Through prayer, you reach beyond your fears and connect with divine strength that cannot be shaken. You begin to realize that courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to move forward despite it. Faith gives you that courage because it roots your confidence not in yourself, but in the unchanging nature of God. When you focus your heart on divine promises, fear begins to lose its grip. It cannot survive in the presence of unwavering beliefs. Prayer transforms fear because it changes your perspective. When you look at your problems through human eyes, they seem impossible. But when you look at them through the lens of faith, they become opportunities for growth. You begin to understand that every trial carries a lesson, every delay a reason, and every challenge a purpose. Faith doesn't ask you to ignore reality. It asks you to see beyond it. It asks you to trust that even in the darkest moment, there is light waiting to be revealed. When fear says, "You are alone," prayer reminds you, "You are surrounded by divine love." When fear says, "This is the end," faith whispers, "This is the beginning of something greater." A faith also brings peace, the kind that cannot be shaken by external chaos. Through prayer, your heart learns to rest even in the middle of the storm. You begin to trust that the outcome does not depend solely on your effort, but on divine timing and grace. That peace does not come from knowing how everything will unfold, but from knowing that you are not facing it alone. You become aware that there is a divine hand guiding every detail of your life. Fear thrives in noise and confusion, but prayer silences that noise and creates space for faith to speak. It reminds you to breathe, to slow down, and to listen for the still, quiet voice that says, "Do not be afraid." When you make prayer your daily habit, you begin to notice how your relationship with fear changes. Situations that once triggered panic or anxiety now become moments of reflection and trust. You start asking not, "Why is this happening to me?" but "What is this trying to teach me?" This shift in mindset comes only from faith that has been nurtured consistently through prayer. You realize that fear loses its power when you stop feeding it and start feeding your faith instead. Every prayer you speak, every verse you read, every moment you spend in stillness adds strength to your spiritual foundation. Over time, that foundation becomes so solid that no fear can shake it. Faith over fear is also about recognizing where your focus lies. Whatever you focus on grows stronger. If you dwell on your fears, they expand, taking over your mind and emotions. But when you fix your eyes on faith, on the promises of God, your strength expands instead. Prayer helps you shift that focus. It directs your attention away from what frightens you and toward the one who empowers you. It reminds you that fear is temporary, but faith is eternal. It reminds you that fear limits, but faith liberates. The more you pray, the more natural it becomes to trust, even in moments that once filled you with dread. Faith gives you the strength to take action despite uncertainty. It allows you to step forward when logic says to stop. It gives you the confidence to pursue dreams that seem impossible, to forgive those who hurt you, to keep going even when progress is slow. Fear says, "Stay where it's safe," but faith says, "Step forward. God will meet you there." Each step you take in faith is an act of defiance against fear, a declaration that you believe in divine possibility over human limitation. This is the essence of spiritual strength, to move not by sight but by trust, to act not because you have no fears, but because you believe in something greater than fear. Through prayer, you start to see examples of faith in your everyday life. You notice how the small things you once worried about begin to resolve on their own. You start to experience peace in situations where you used to panic. You realize that the more you trust, the more life flows effortlessly. Prayer becomes the bridge that connects your human heart to divine strength. It reminds you that faith is not just believing that God can, but knowing that He will, in His time and in His way. The more you practice this trust, the less room fear has to grow. Faith over fear is also an act of remembrance. It is remembering who you are and whose you are. It is remembering that you are divinely created, deeply loved, and eternally supported. Fear tries to make you forget your strength, your worth, and your purpose. But prayer brings those truths back to the surface. It reminds you that you are not a victim of circumstances, but a vessel of divine power. When you pray, you reconnect with that truth, and suddenly, fear begins to shrink. It cannot survive in the presence of remembrance, because remembrance restores your identity and renews your confidence. Living with faith over fear also influences how you interact with others. You become a source of calm in chaotic situations. Your presence itself becomes peaceful, because prayer has filled you with a quiet assurance that radiates outward. You become someone who uplifts, encourages, and strengthens others, because you are no longer speaking from a place of worry, but from a place of faith. You start to see how your faith can inspire others to overcome their own fears. It becomes a ripple effect. Your courage encourages another person to trust, and their trust encourages someone else. This is how faith spreads, not through grand gestures, but through consistent examples of quiet confidence rooted in prayer. Fear often thrives in isolation, but prayer connects you to God, to others, and to your purpose. It reminds you that you are never truly alone. Each time you pray, you strengthen that invisible bond of divine love that carries you through the hardest days. Faith over fear means believing that no challenge is too great, no obstacle too high, no situation too hopeless when divine strength is on your side. It is choosing to see with spiritual eyes instead of worldly ones, to walk forward with confidence even when the path is not fully visible. Faith gives you power because it changes your energy. It replaces the vibration of fear, which constricts and limits, with the vibration of trust, which expands and frees. It opens your heart to possibilities you once dismissed and opportunities you once doubted. It turns your "I can't" into "with God, I will." Prayer fuels this transformation because it keeps your spiritual energy aligned with divine truth. Every word you speak in faith is a declaration of freedom from the grip of fear. When you make faith your default response to life's challenges, everything changes. Fear may still knock on your door, but it no longer enters. You begin to meet uncertainty with calmness, hardship with hope, and disappointment with understanding. You realize that every test of faith is an invitation to grow stronger. The presence of fear no longer discourages you. It becomes a reminder that your faith is working. Because faith is not tested in comfort, it is revealed in adversity, and through prayer, that faith becomes unbreakable. The journey from fear to faith is not a single moment, it is a daily practice. It is a choice you make each time doubt arises, to trust instead of tremble, to pray instead of panic, to believe instead of break. With every repetition, faith becomes your natural response, your instinctive reaction to life's uncertainties. And as that faith deepens, it begins to replace fear entirely. Prayer shapes your mind, strengthens your spirit, and teaches your heart that you are safe, supported, and loved beyond measure. Faith does not eliminate fear instantly, but it renders it powerless, because once you truly believe that divine power is working through you, there is nothing left to fear. Building spiritual resilience begins in the quiet corners of the heart, where strength is born not from force but from faith. It is the kind of strength that doesn't come from lifting heavy burdens, but from learning how to carry them with grace. Life will always test you with seasons of struggle, disappointment, and uncertainty. Sometimes it feels like you are standing in the middle of a storm with no shelter in sight, yet even in those moments, there is something within you that refuses to break. That something is your spirit, and it is through prayer that your spirit learns how to endure, how to rise, and how to remain unshaken when everything around you seems to fall apart. Building spiritual resilience is not about avoiding pain or pretending everything is fine. It is about developing the inner stability to face life's trials with courage and trust. When you turn to prayer in moments of weakness, you are not escaping reality, you are strengthening yourself to meet it. Each prayer whispered in pain, each tear shed in surrender, becomes part of the foundation upon which resilience is built. Prayer teaches you that strength does not come from never falling, but from always finding the courage to stand again. Every time you kneel in prayer, you are training your heart to withstand the weight of life's uncertainties. You learn that even when you feel fragile, divine strength is working through you. Spiritual resilience is born in the moments when you feel least capable, yet choose to trust anyways. It is not a sudden burst of courage, but a gradual transformation that comes from daily connection with God. There are times when you may feel as though your prayers are unanswered, when silence feels like abandonment and delay feels like rejection. But those are the sacred moments in which resilience is formed. It is in those pauses that your faith is stretched and your character is shaped. When God seems distant, it is not to weaken you but to deepen you. You learn to rely not on feelings but on faith, not on what you see but on what you believe. Through prayer, you begin to understand that unanswered prayers are not signs of neglect but signs of preparation. Each moment of waiting strengthens your endurance and refines your patience. It is through these quiet struggles that your spirit learns how to bend without breaking. Spiritual resilience also comes from remembering your purpose, even when pain tries to distract you. It is easy to stay strong when everything is going your way, but true strength is revealed when you keep believing even in the dark. Prayer keeps that belief alive. It reminds you that the same God who was with you in your moments of joy is also with you in your moments of despair. The connection built through daily prayer becomes the anchor that holds you steady when waves of fear, doubt, and discouragement crash around you. You begin to realize that resilience is not about suppressing emotion, but about allowing divine presence to transform your pain into wisdom. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me?" Each challenge becomes a lesson in faith, a chance to grow stronger and wiser. Through prayer, you learn the art of surrender, which is the foundation of spiritual resilience. Surrender is not giving up, it is giving over. It is placing your burdens in divine hands and trusting that what feels like loss might actually be growth. When you surrender in prayer, you are not admitting defeat, but acknowledging that there is a higher power guiding your steps. You begin to see that resilience does not mean controlling everything, but learning to trust even when you cannot control anything. The more you pray, the more your heart learns to rest in that trust. Slowly, fear loses its hold and peace takes its place. That peace becomes your greatest strength because it allows you to move through storms without being consumed by them. Spiritual resilience is also built through gratitude. When you make it a habit to thank God even in difficult times, you are training your mind to see light in darkness. Gratitude changes how you experience challenges. Instead of focusing on what is missing, you begin to see what remains: your breath, your faith, your hope, your lessons. Prayer and gratitude work together to fortify your spirit. They teach you that even in loss, there is something left to be grateful for. Gratitude does not erase pain, but it gives it purpose. It reminds you that resilience is not about pretending everything is perfect, but about finding reasons to keep going despite imperfections. Every obstacle you face becomes an opportunity to deepen your spiritual roots. Just as a tree grows stronger when its roots dig deeper during storms, your spirit grows stronger when it leans more deeply into prayer. The winds of life may bend you, but they cannot uproot you when your faith runs deep. Through prayer, you develop spiritual flexibility, the ability to adapt, adjust, and stay grounded no matter what happens. You learn to stop resisting the storms and start trusting that they are shaping you for something greater. You discover that resilience is not just surviving hardship, but growing because of it. Each prayer you speak adds another layer of strength, another strand to the thread of endurance that weaves your spirit together. There are times when your strength will surprise even you. You will look back on moments you thought would break you and realize that they built you. That realization comes from spiritual resilience, from knowing that divine presence carried you when you couldn't carry yourself. Prayer helps you recognize this truth. It reminds you that resilience is not about being unshakable, but about being able to recover quickly, to rebuild, to rise again and again. Every challenge faced with faith becomes a testimony of divine power working through human weakness. You start to understand that your strength is not truly yours. It is borrowed from the one who created you. Prayer also helps you transform suffering into service. Once you begin to understand that your pain can be used to help others, your resilience takes on a new dimension. You start to see your struggles not as punishments, but as tools to cultivate compassion. When you pray through your pain and come out stronger, you gain the empathy to lift others who are still hurting. Spiritual resilience turns your wounds into wisdom, your battles into blessings. You begin to share hope instead of fear, faith instead of despair. Your journey becomes a living testimony that strength built on prayer can withstand anything. Resilience also requires self-awareness, and prayer brings that clarity. In silence, you begin to see your own thoughts, fears, and habits more clearly. You recognize what drains your energy and what nourishes your soul. You learn to let go of negativity and to fill your mind with truth. Through prayerful reflection, you identify the patterns that keep you stuck and the beliefs that need healing. This awareness strengthens your resilience because you stop reacting impulsively and start responding wisely. You realize that not every battle is yours to fight, and not every challenge needs immediate resolution. Some things are meant to be left in divine hands. As you grow spiritually resilient, you begin to notice a calmness within you that others can sense. People will ask how you remain peaceful in chaos, and your answer will always be prayer. You will find that your reactions to problems change. Instead of breaking down, you pause, breathe, and pray. You begin to trust the process even when it doesn't make sense. You understand that every season of life, joy, pain, waiting, growth, serves a divine purpose. Resilience becomes your natural state because your faith has taught you that every ending is a beginning in disguise. Building spiritual resilience also involves forgiveness. Forgiving others, forgiving yourself, and letting go of resentment that weighs you down. Prayer softens your heart and helps you release the pain that holds you captive. When you forgive, you free yourself from emotional chains that drain your strength. You begin to experience freedom, and that freedom enhances your resilience. You are no longer carrying the heaviness of grudges or regrets. Instead, you walk lightly, trusting that divine justice and mercy are always at work. Through forgiveness, you learn that resilience is not about holding everything together tightly, but about letting go of what no longer serves your peace. Faith and resilience walk hand in hand. Each strengthens the other. The more you trust, the stronger you become, and the stronger you become, the deeper your trust grows. Prayer is the bridge that connects these two forces. It allows you to process pain without being consumed by it, to face uncertainty without losing peace. You begin to understand that life is not meant to be easy but meaningful. Every difficulty you face is a spiritual exercise designed to refine you, not destroy you. When you embrace this truth, you no longer fear the storms. You see them as opportunities to reveal your inner power. Even in moments when you feel distant from God, prayer reminds you that He is closer than your breath. You learn that resilience does not mean constant strength. It means returning to prayer every time you feel weak. It means showing up again and again, even when your heart is heavy and your words feel empty. You discover that God values your presence more than your perfection. Each time you come back to prayer, you rebuild your foundation. You become like a house that may sway in the wind, but never collapses because its roots are anchored in divine truth. Over time, spiritual resilience becomes your second nature. You begin to meet life's challenges with grace instead of panic. You recognize that no matter how difficult things appear, there is always divine strength available to you. You learn that prayer is not just a response to hardship, but a preparation for it. Each prayer you offer becomes a deposit of strength that you can draw from in times of need. It becomes your invisible armor, protecting you from the blows of life and reminding you that you are never powerless. As your resilience deepens, you stop fearing struggle and start embracing growth. You begin to trust that everything happening to you is shaping something within you. The storms that once frightened you become familiar teachers. You start to see how divine love uses challenges to awaken your potential and sharpen your faith. Prayer becomes not just a refuge but a rhythm, the steady heartbeat of your spiritual life. It keeps you connected, centered, and courageous. Even when you don't have the strength to move forward, prayer moves you. It carries you through darkness and lifts you toward light. Building spiritual resilience is a journey without shortcuts. It takes patience, surrender, and faith that endures even when the outcome is unknown. It means falling and rising, doubting and believing, breaking and healing. But through it all, prayer remains the thread that holds your soul together. It reminds you that divine strength is made perfect in your weakness, that your spirit was never meant to be defeated, and that every challenge you face is an invitation to grow closer to the source of eternal